Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Welcome back.
To another episode of something that we're doing this week. This is actually Cancel My Box.
Yes. If you would like your box canceled, now is the time.
We do lots of that. We'll sit here and look all gruff.
I'm so angry.
Yeah, sorry, your phone's there.
Yeah, my phone keeps trying to blank out.
So this week's episode is about hope. And not a person's name, no. That joke's already been played out by everyone in this household.
Yes.
Everyone. Except me, because
Lena made it like 4 times.
the X-Men. It's the X-Men. So this one is basically around comics and graphic novels that deal with hope. And our definition that we're going to use, we actually got here pulled up on the phone, is an optimistic state of mind that is based on an expectation of positive outcomes with respect to events and circumstances in one's life or the world at large. It's actually a really good definition.
That is a great definition.
And that's what we want to talk about today. Like, everyone wants to talk, and this isn't a political conversation. This is literally about positive outcomes and where we're going, and not and what we want in our books. And it's kind of, I guess in a way, it's kind of odd. Like, I read a bunch of stuff that's from graphic novels to young adult, all ages and stuff. But it really came back to the superhero side of stuff, which is very unlike me, right? Like, I do a lot of superhero stuff, but I read so much other stuff. But the main emphasis is always a certain number of characters. Now, we do have a bunch of other books that we're going to kind of just touch upon.
But when we were kind of like putting this list of books and characters together, it really leaned heavy towards superheroes. And I think that's kind of the heart of superheroes. They're designed to inspire hope. I know the way that we were raised, there wasn't really a lot of hope. So we sort of turned to comic books to get that in our lives. And it has continued until now.
Yep. And in some of these that we're going to go through, like I said, we're not going to deep dive into each one of these books, but we kind of want to just hit on a level. So, not saying this is going to be like a 2-hour video and hit all these books. That's not the plan. But some of these books that we're going to talk about, it's not, is it just from the character perspective, but it's the outside perspective of these. And that's kind of over there on that stack.
Yeah.
So, where you want to start first?
I say we start with the character that inspired us the most as children. I say we start with Spider-Man.
Okay. All right, so in this instance, what I decided to do is I have thousands of Spider-Man books, but I decided to use the one that Penguin put out last year.
It was either last year or year before.
I think it was 2022. It was a nice book, and it's a bunch of different stories in it.
And some essays about the character and its origins and what he means to people.
Yeah. This is just a bunch of original Spider-Man.
This is all like the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko stuff.
Yeah, it's all of this what's built into here. Like I said, I've got this in many different formats, but we're going to talk Spider-Man.
Yeah. So for me, Spider-Man has been my favorite superhero since I was able to read. I think I read my first Spider-Man book when I was around 6, and he's been my favorite ever since.
Yeah.
And it's because no matter how the odds are stacked against him, no matter how far behind he is in rent, no matter how sick Aunt May got, he never gave up. He was always the guy that maybe you couldn't count on to show up to move your sofa, but if you really needed help, he was always there.
But he was usually on the way to help you move your sofa.
Yeah.
Let's be fair.
People would need help while he was on his way to help. And it was just like a nonstop. So some of the better Spider-Man comics ever, and this happens every 10 years or so, there'll be an issue where he's like, I've got to get to this place to do this thing. And it's just all the things that happen on the way that slow him down, so that when he gets to the place, the person that's close to him is disappointed in him. But all these people have been saved and helped.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with Spider-Man or Peter Parker, let's use Peter Parker as an example here. So when you go back to Amazing Fantasy 15, right, which is his first appearance, he ended up being selfish one time.
One time.
And everything turned out horribly. Like, regardless if it was his fault or not, he blamed himself. And from that, it really changed how that character looked at everything and wanting to be there. Now, once again, he started in 62. So throughout these ages, has there been parts where, you know, I think he went through one phase of no one dies on my watch. And, and you know, that's not realistic for any hero. And you put that kind of pressure. But at the end of the day, his whole message has been about he's going to do what he can when he can for everyone.
Yeah.
And then not only that, but about every 2 years, there's basically a creative team that will come along and say, you know what, I'm going to write a story to actually show you who Peter Parker is.
Yep. Tom Taylor did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. That was that whole.
Was that Friendly Neighborhood?
Friendly Neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then back in the 70s with the kid with cancer.
The kid who collects Spider-Man.
And then there was actually a story that came out. It was probably near the 9/11 time, not the single issue, but it was like a backup Betty Bryant story. And he was setting up a birthday party for her. Yeah. And no one showed up, and she was mad at Peter because she knew he was making this surprise party, but basically at the end of the day, no one wanted to show up for her because of who her husband was, which was Ned. But he was there for her, and he basically gave her the speech of why, he didn't want to tell her, but she kind of forced it out of him because she was disappointed in him. But once again, he's always been about hope, and he's always been about his friends, and no matter what he's going to do, he was as rich as Iron Man one time. Yeah. And he ended up basically letting his whole company get destroyed.
Yeah, he's like, I can save people by doing this thing, but it's going to destroy my company. People matter more.
Yeah, and be mad at me. People are going to hate me.
Everyone's going to hate me, but they will be safe.
But they will be safe, right. And so it's that selflessness that has led him to be mostly my inspiration. And
yeah. I do think he's where all of my guilt issues come from. I blame Spider-Man for that.
Yeah, well, once again,
nobody's perfect.
No. But we get it, right? He wants to be there to help, and so that's where he is.
He does his best all the time, even when his best isn't very good.
Good, right?
Yeah,
and that's all we can hope for, right?
Yep,
is
exactly.
Just do your best, help people. Will it always work out? Absolutely not. But that's where we should be.
So I think we go now to what is probably the most hopeful character in the history of comics. Because the S stands for hope.
Superman. Sorry, this is Superman for All Seasons. It's my hardcover.
It's very fancy.
It is it's a very fancy hardcover. It's actually cloth bound. So I also get to show off some of my collection on these videos. So.
And here, for those of us who are not as fancy as Phillip.
And I have this. These are the new $10 trades that are out.
Yeah, the really cool. DC Compact Comics.
Yep. So if you want to read Superman and About Hope, actually this All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison.
I have said since this book came out, All-Star Superman is the best Superman fan fiction ever written.
Yes.
Grant Morrison understands how Superman fits into the world. Not just the DC universe, but the world. Why is he important?
Right. And I think so. I'll be honest in this video. Superman is not always my favorite character because in his universe, he is highly overpowered. It's Superman, right? It takes a lot to stop him. But the stories that mean the most and really show you who he is the one where either he loses his power or it's a Clark Kent story, because there really is no difference between Clark Kent and Superman in this instance. Right? They're literally the same person, just one has glasses and one doesn't.
For all of the faults of the New 52, that last year of Superman, he got vastly depowered.
Yeah.
So he was like Captain America strong, not Superman strong.
Right.
And he kept fighting Superman level threats because that's who he is.
Right.
Mongol is threatening to destroy the planet. Superman's like, well, I got to go wrap my fists in tape so that when I punch him and break my fingers, I can keep punching it.
Yeah. And like in some of those stories, Superman turned the tide because of what he was willing to fight against, because of he had no powers.
The last few issues of Action Comics, Gail Simone wrote a really lovely throwback story about the inspiration that just comes off of Superman. Like it does, he just, him showing up just provides hope.
Right. And I mean, he is the original superhero, basically.
Yeah.
And like Tommy said, I'll go here. The S actually stands for hope.
And his genesis is one of hope. It's a bunch of Jewish Americans who are seeing what the Nazis are doing in Europe. And this is long before we got involved in the war. And they create Superman as this symbol of hope and unity and inclusiveness. I know that's a dirty word to some people, but basically he was created as a way of going, okay, everything's terrible right now, but things will get better. Yeah. Everything will get better.
And pretty much throughout all of his stories, at the end of whatever he's doing, it ends up being a very hopeful story, and we will get better, right? Mm-hmm. Like even when we went through the Luthor as president stuff, it's you went through the whole storyline, and you're like, well, how do you get there? But once again, Superman just kept doing what he could do because that's not something he could punch.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's like, there's all this stuff that we can do all the time. And so he is the original hopeful character. I mean, it's like I said, it's the stories like Superman for All Seasons, All-Star Superman. Actually, they did a story. What was the one where they did the year jump that time and he was depowered?
Oh, 52.
Was that when 52 did that?
Yeah, it was after Infinite Crisis. Yeah. All the books did a 1 year later jump. And then for 52 weeks, we got a weekly series called 52. No Batman, no Wonder Woman, no Superman. And Superman was depowered. So he was just an investigative journalist. He was just Clark Kent, and he was going into these incredibly dangerous places to tell these important stories.
Right. And then wasn't it Straczynski who did a storyline basically where Superman decided to walk across the country?
So, and that was one of those where Superman sort of seemed hopeless.
Yeah.
The Bottle City of Kandor had gotten normal sized, and the Kryptonians were living like on one of the Saturn's moons or something like that. And long story short, it got destroyed again. So Krypton has died a second time. Right. And Superman is just dejected because he had promised these people he would save them. And he basically lands in California and starts walking across the country.
Yep. And
every issue was him getting involved in the lives of people that he meets along the way. And man, it was so powerful.
It was. So I've always said my favorite Superman stories is usually the one where Superman's not in it or he's depowered, because once again, it shows you who that character is.
And in this particular story, he was still Superman.
Yep.
He had all his powers, but almost none of the challenges that he hit along his walk had anything to do with superpowers.
Yeah.
Like there was a dad abusing his kid. That's the one that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
That issue where Superman had to basically deal with an abusive parent, and that's not something Superman can punch.
No, very much so.
But at the end of each issue, because it was a long story arc, but every issue was one and done. It was, I found a problem, I'm going to deal with the problem, and now I'm moving on to the next thing. And at the end of every issue, there was just a little more hope, a little more.
Right. About things can get better.
Yeah. And that's just the essence of Superman.
Right.
Like no matter how bleak things look, they can get better.
Yeah. And like I said, if you really want to get to the crux of it, All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison will.
Yeah, I think All-Star might be my favorite Superman story.
Yeah. I mean, For All Seasons is great, and Superman.
And for those of us who don't have fancy hardcovers, this is what the Superman for All Seasons look like.
Still fancy. All right. So next we'll go back to Marvel.
Same era, same color scheme,
same everything,
same
same team.
Jewish creators trying to find to make sense in a senseless world.
And this is Captain America. And this was the same team who did Superman for All Seasons, is what I was saying, not when Captain America was created. That's a whole. It's a red, white, and blue. This was multiple creative team. Actually, this was the multiple creative teams that did this series.
Okay.
And it wasn't the blue and red by Loeb and stuff. Sorry. I think this was right when Captain America died. Civil War.
Oh, right.
Is when this came out.
Right.
But anyway, I brought this because really it was a bunch of short stories about hope and what Captain America meant to a lot of people. And it is some reason, and I'll say this here, Captain America gets spun in a way that is not Captain America-ish. Right? So Civil War, I think, during that timeline between him and Tony was really the perfect example of Captain America, because it really threw it in the face of everyone was like, well, you work for the government. And he's like, no, I work for the people.
For the people. I do what the government's supposed to do, and I work for the people.
Right. And that was really what the crux of Civil War was, is everyone initially, like in the comic industry, everyone was like, but why is because Captain America's for the people. Tony Stark was your industry.
Yeah.
So your industries at the time.
And that was nowhere near the first time that Captain America had those sentiments. He quit being Captain America in the 80s because the government wanted to dictate where he could go and what he could do. Yeah. And he's like, if people need help, I'm going to help them. And they're like, no, only certain people are going to get your help. And he was like, I quit.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I'm either for everybody or nobody. Yeah. So I quit. And then he got a new costume and just kept doing his thing.
And that was where the black costume actually came from.
Yeah.
The black with the silver and the star and the black shield.
Yep.
And he became the captain for a while. And that's when we got John Walker as Captain America.
And when the government took his shield, Black Panther made him a new one.
Yes.
His the new shield that he had as the agent was pure vibranium.
Yeah. So, but Captain America's always been about hope. I mean, he came out during the war and before. Yeah.
That's one of the things where I had somebody this week who were like, this thing is too woke. And I'm like, I don't understand what that means. Please explain. And of course they couldn't. But the Captain America #1 was before America entered World War II. And it had an American superhero draped in the American flag punching another world leader in the face.
Right.
Like, however at the time, it was very divisive.
Yes.
And that's how comics have always been.
And he still is, right? Like, he's still a divisive character because, I mean, once again, he's Captain America, but he's for the people. He's not for the government. He's for doing what's right for everyone. And if you read any Captain America story, like, don't just take something that a Wikipedia says or something like that.
Yeah.
And once again, we're probably a little bit more political on this than where this is normally going, but Captain America brings that out in people because his whole character has always been about hope for the people, not hope for the government.
Right.
It's how do we make everyone better, right? Which is why his stories have always been so important. I mean, I forget sometimes because yesterday and 10 years ago about the same.
It all blurs together.
But I think it was the late 80s, 90s where it was the hotline.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, he was a Captain America hotline. And so people could call the hotline and leave messages and he would go out.
Yeah, he'd go help them.
Yep. And so, I'll be honest, the new Captain America series currently coming out from Straczynski, like, it is a prime example of where he went back and he took over the old.
Yeah, he bought an apartment building, and
he works it now.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that kind of goes back to that 80s, 90s, and I forget which run is that. I'm sure someone else can correct it down below. That's not what it is. Those exact issues aren't what this is about, but it's about the hope that he brings to people.
Sometimes people write Captain America and they just don't get it.
Right.
But when somebody, and I feel like with all the hopeful characters that happens.
Yeah.
Like you'll get somebody come in and they'll write a book that they think is cool or edgy, and it's like this isn't really the essence of the character. But when they are written well, which Captain America right now is being written very well.
Yes, it is.
It resonates, and it just exudes that hope, which is what we want from these characters. Is why they've stuck around so long.
Yeah, it's what I want from all of this.
Yeah.
So, but Captain America is a big part of the hope in comics. And next we'll tackle, back to DC, we're going to tackle Wonder Woman. And this is once again, this is the year one. I don't have the trade for the new series.
Yeah, we goofed on that one. We should have grabbed it.
Yeah.
Tom King's series is, we're 13 issues in now of Tom King's series. And I think this is going to end up being my favorite run of Wonder Woman ever written.
And so, I mean, basically her whole premise was created also by hope, right? It was, we needed to send, they needed to send someone to be an ambassador for man from Paradise Island. And the hope is to bring people together.
Yeah.
And that was her whole journey through that process. And that's really kind of who Wonder Woman is.
Even her birth was sort of like just, you've got an island full of immortal women.
Right.
None of them have had a child. And the queen of them is like, I hope for a baby. And so she made one out of clay. And I think the original story was Zeus breathed life into this clay and created this child. And the origin changes, but it doesn't matter. Her whole existence is about hope.
Right. And the interesting thing is, and we'll talk about the DC Trinity really quick, right? You have like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Batman is dark. He doesn't really have much hope. His is just everything is awful all the time, regardless of how you look at it, right? So we're not actually talking about him. Superman's hope is what he wants everyone to be, right? And that's his hope. Wonder Woman is probably the realist of the group.
Yeah.
She understands really how the world works, how everyone works in it. But through that's where she focuses on to make that situation better. So it's the hope in the situation, not just...
There's a quote, and I can't remember if it was Gail Simone or if it was before Gail Simone, but the quote was, never use a fist without offering a hand first.
Right.
And I think that is kind of the essence of Wonder Woman. Like, she will do everything she can to help you, but if you have determined that you would rather fight, then she'll do that too.
Yeah, she'll usually warn you first.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like there's a beautiful issue of this current run where it's just her and Cheetah on an island.
It's issue 10.
And it's just the two of them beating the crap out of each other for the whole issue.
It is a hard issue.
And it is just
beautiful.
It's beautiful and brutal, and it really boils down the essence of like Wonder Woman wants to help this woman, but this woman doesn't want help right now. Yeah. So she's like, okay, I guess this is what you need, and that's what I'll give you.
And I do agree that I think this issue 10 of Tom King's run is, if you ever really want to know who Wonder Woman is, I guess you kind of have to have issue 9 also. Yeah. If you don't have issue 9 without issue 10, you may be a little lost, but issue 9 and 10 really is the essence of who she is and why she gives everyone hope, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just your normal people that she gives hope. She gives hope to people who think there's nothing good for them, like Cheetah, right? Like, there's nothing good for me. I'm a villain. You don't care. And it's not true. Like Diana, she cares. She cares about those people. Even
the Wonder Woman Dead Earth Black Label miniseries, which is a post-apocalyptic like hellscape. Yeah. And Diana still finds ways to try and be a beacon of hope to these people that have lost everything, including Cheetah. Yeah. Who somehow is still alive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but Wonder Woman is a big example of hope. She always has been. That's like, once again, they've done stuff for shock value over the years, right? Yeah. Like, she killed what's his name,
Max Lord.
Yeah, Max Lord. But that was
He was mind controlling Superman.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do in that instance?
Right. You know, and then it was, I mean, once again, it was done for shock value because everybody's like, well, she won't kill anyone. Well, she did. But he's better now, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's all better now. But Wonder Woman is a prime example of hope. A lot of these are DC characters.
Yeah.
It's just, and honestly, a lot of it is based on what we've been reading lately.
It really is. Wonder Woman and Superman have both been really good. Captain America has been great. We're going to read Spider-Man regardless.
Right.
I know a lot of people are disliking the current run of Spider-Man, but I think it's fine.
I think the current run is actually doing really well for me in the sense that whether you like all the stories or not, he's obviously understanding the character.
Right.
Like there's pieces in there.
What was that one issue?
950.
Yeah, that was just perfect.
Yeah.
It was perfect Spider-Man.
Yeah, it was everything about. So as long as you're understanding the character, it's fine. Now, whether you like who he's fighting or not, but I've actually like most of this storyline I've liked because it's been street level with Spider-Man.
Anyway.
So the next one is sadly getting ready to come to a close. And I guess in the past, I would have never put him in the hope category. Like for a individual or family, yes. But
for the entire DC universe?
For the entire DC universe or the world, right?
Yeah.
Which is Tom Taylor's Nightwing. Tom Taylor's Nightwing, since he's been writing it, has probably been my favorite superhero book.
Yeah, I would agree.
By far.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with during this time, like Alfred has died and left Dick Grayson all his money.
Yeah. Turns out Alfred was a billionaire. Yeah. He just really liked being a butler.
but it's really now that he's come in to basically be the richest one of the Bat family. What do you do with that? And that's kind of really the emphasis of what this whole story is what do you do to help people with that kind of money?
Yeah.
And that's what he sets out to do. Now, is there superhero fights and villains and stuff? Yes.
Of course.
But from beginning to end of everything that's going, like even right now, his last storyline is Fallen Grayson. And Nightwing hasn't given up. He hasn't given up hope, but everything is against him.
Yeah.
And actually what he's doing now, even in leaving Bloodhaven, is about hope. It's about finding that hope to save everyone.
And to tell you just how much hope this man really gives out into the world, he made Batman quippy.
He did.
And while he's been gone, Batman's been pretending to be Nightwing. And so that the city doesn't go crazy. And Batman has made some quips.
Yeah.
Because Nightwing is, kind of a smartass.
Yep. And it's just been really, and through this, I will throw kind of the Titans in this because they made the Titans be like the beacon of the DC universe because they're a family and they're there for each other. And I think that's what's made this a big part of it is the supporting cast of this Nightwing. Like I said, I wouldn't have always put him in the hope category. Like his whole purpose was to keep Batman to have hope.
Yeah.
Right. But he wasn't a beacon for the universe. But what Tom Taylor has done here, and then I'll even go one step further, the way Mark Waid in Absolute Power is writing Nightwing like Tom Taylor is. And it's showing the hope that he has brought to everyone in that room, basically.
Yep. So Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are kind of bickering over what they should do, and Nightwing just takes charge and just tells everybody what to do. And every one of the members, like, these are the strongest, craziest, insane powered people in the DC universe, and they're just like, yes, sir, whatever you say, Nightwing. Yeah. But one of the things that I've really loved about this book is showing the difference between Nightwing and Batman. Batman's got all this money, so he builds a cave, he makes a bunch of gadgets, and he beats up crazy people.
Right.
And that's kind of where it stops. Nightwing is like, okay, we're going to shut down this for-profit prison system. Right. I'm going to move the Titans into this town. I am going to build a community center. I'm going to revitalize the worst part of the area. I'm just going to throw money at the problem and try to raise these people up out of poverty.
Right.
Because that is really how you stop the cycle of criminality.
Yep. And like I said, when we're talking about hope here, and it's specific to this Tom Taylor run, right?
Yeah.
Like, and don't like Grayson doesn't really have that kind of vibe because he's just he's 007.
Yeah,
Right?
it's a spy book.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's a great book, but it's just a spy book, right? Like it's like I would not put James Bond in the level of Hope, right? And that's how Grayson is. And so your normal Nightwing stuff is I would not put that, but when we want to look at Hope and what's going on today, I think Nightwing really fits the bill.
Yeah, and the Titans book also fits in there too.
Yeah.
Nightwing and Titans. And then, like it or hate it, Absolute Power, the 4-issue miniseries that just ended, the Nightwing parts are phenomenal.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite part.
Yeah, 100%.
My favorite parts is the Nightwing parts there.
Yep.
It's kind of like watching a 2-hour movie, and then the person who got 3.5 minutes of screen time is your favorite character. That's Nightwing in that, right? Because of everything else that's going on, but those 3.5 minutes was really impactful.
Yeah.
For Absolute Power. And so the last one that we're going to talk about from DC, not the last book, the last DC book we're going to talk about is actually Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which is another Tom King book. But the reason that I want to talk about this is Supergirl has always had the same mentality of Superman as far as hope goes. But the interesting thing that, and this is what the new movie is going to be based off of, just in case anyone's want to know. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about this is this book is not written from Supergirl's perspective. It's written by another character's perspective of how they see Supergirl and the hope that Supergirl has brought on them, mm-hmm. which if this story was written from Supergirl's perspective, I guarantee you wouldn't get half that information because nowhere in here would Supergirl think of herself that way.
Yeah.
And so that's why this book is so interesting. It is not from the view of Supergirl. It's from the view of the other girl that is on this planet that she's helping with. And it's a pretty phenomenal book. Like, if you haven't read this, everyone should go read this. It is not your typical...
It's won every award you could think of. Yeah. It is basically the Supergirl movie that they're doing with Millie Alcock. This is the story.
Yeah. Like, it is phenomenal. And Crypto's in it, so...
Well,
I mean...
Crypto's in it.
She's got a dog. Come on, man. But, I mean, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. Or
the Super family are all...
It's all this... Yeah.
Yeah, all pretty hopeful.
Yeah.
This particular story is a standout.
Yeah. This is very, very standout-ish.
Do you want to talk about the Superman, non-Superman while we're still in the Super family?
Yeah. I've got that right here.
Oh.
Yeah, I got
it. You had both copies. Okay. So Mark Miller, who weirdly is a name that we've been saying a lot today while talking about books about hope. And like I said to Phil before we started filming, he's written a lot of very cynical books. But he really knows how to portray hope. Yeah. So Huck was a very strong, visceral reaction to Mark Miller seeing Man of Steel in the theater. And because he's like, Superman absolutely does not kill people. And there were a lot, I enjoyed Man of Steel, but there were a lot of things about that movie that made it less Superman and more like,
right,
we're going to try and make a cool movie. So Huck is about a guy who, he works at a gas station. He comes off as a little slow, even though I don't think that's true. I think he's just, his mentality, he reminds me of Andy Griffith.
Right.
In that he's just very wholesome and very kind. And so even when like he is fighting a criminal, he's like, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah.
He.
But I think that's the thing that people need to remember, right? Is exactly, he's looked at as like he's slow, but he really is not. He just takes everything in.
Yeah.
And he's very methodical about what he does. If you follow the character, he's just not going to react. He's a thinking.
And the crux of the story is that he's a guy with superpowers who lives in a small town. and he was abandoned on the steps of an orphanage with a note that said, "Please love him,"
Right.
which is important.
Love.
So he's raised basically by this town, and they all know he has superpowers, and they are keeping it a secret.
Right.
And this new person moves into town, and so this woman who basically is like a grandmother to him is talking to this woman, and she's like, "Here's what you need to know. We need to protect him. We need to make sure that nothing hurts him because he is too good for this world."
Right.
He was raised to help people. He was raised by nuns in an orphanage, so he was raised with the idea that helping people is the most important thing you can do. So he has a little notebook with ideas of how he can help people, and he does one good deed every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes the good deed is like, I found her necklace that she lost. And sometimes the good deed is, I rescued a bunch of girls who have been kidnapped in Somalia or wherever. Like, he doesn't see a difference in those things. Right. He just wants to do good.
Yeah, he just wants to help people.
And of course the story gets out, and then it gets a little like superhero convoluted, which, you know.
Yeah. I said I got the bigger pages. You could kind of see up top where it says, "Hey, good deeds for Friday."
Yeah.
So, because he keeps it all in or possible good deeds for Friday. So he makes a list.
He's just a genuinely good person trying to do good in the world.
Yeah.
And we have, the world right now is so cynical and, you know, a little dark. So books like this really, like, I hadn't reread this since it came out 10 years ago or something. And I sat down last night and reread this for the first time in a while, and I teared up. Like, it really hit some notes that I felt like I needed to be hit.
2016.
Okay, 8 years.
Yeah.
So
that's still.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you were close.
Yep. And I think that's kind of the gist of what we're talking about today, is these books that inspire us to want to be better, and books that help us sort of drown out the negativity and the noise that we're surrounded by right now. Yeah. And sort of like, okay, and things might be bad, but
there's always hope.
There is hope.
And I mean, most of the stuff that I try to read has some type of hope built around it, mm-hmm. right? Like, I mean, once again, we read a bunch of single issue comics. Not every issue is not going to have hope, right?
Right.
It's just the way cliffhangers, right? It's how it mm-hmm. works. But that's why, you know, in here we're trying to show like these trades, because by the time you get to the end, it's there. Now, some of them are longer stories. Some, like Nightwing, is a much longer story.
Yeah.
Most Superman stuff we showed is one-offs, and we're going to stick with Mark Miller.
Once again,
it's, and this is actually Mark Miller and Greg Capullo. I personally, I love this story. It's one of the few books that I kind of read every year, and it's called Reborn. And to make it really simple, what happens when you die? Yeah, it's really what this book is.
Mark Miller's asking some pretty existential questions with this book, like, what happens to good people? What happens to bad people?
What's your place in an afterlife?
Yeah, and if what you believe the afterlife to be isn't what the afterlife is, what does that do to you?
Right.
Like, how do you deal with that? And it is, on the surface, a sword and sorcery fantasy story with dragons and swords and magic users and stuff.
Yeah. Like Oz.
Yeah. And there's
powerful demons.
Big evil demon monster guy that's just killing people because he thinks it's fun.
And I mean, there's parts of it that's interesting, right? So it talks about what happens when you die. But so, like, this person brought hope while she was alive, but now that she's dead, the interesting thing is these people that are dead have been waiting on her.
Yeah.
To bring them hope in the afterlife, which is a whole different level, right?
And one of the things that I really loved is that this woman who this book is about spent her entire life in education. Yeah. She was a school teacher.
She was a school teacher. Yep.
And, you know, she's at the end of her life in a nursing home, and she's asking, like, did I make a difference? is the world a better place because I was in it?
Right.
And then they spend the whole book telling you why. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it really is. And you could pick this up anywhere. It's still available.
Yeah.
It's still in print. If you want to,
he's got a hardcover. This is the trade. They look exactly the same.
Yep. But I love this book. There's just parts of it that once again, I like things that make you think a little bit about the next level, or put that kind of emphasis on it, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, none of us know.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we all hope.
Yeah.
And we all want things to be there. And so the take on this is a little different, that even if the afterlife is not what you think it is, it can still be what you want it to be, which is a part of hope, right? Like, we want to hope something's better for us after the fact.
Yeah. There's a horribly depressing movie called What Dreams May Come. It's Robin Williams. And that movie, I got pre-screener tickets, a job I used to work at, and all of us that worked there went to this movie. And in the middle of it, half of the people walked out. Have you seen What Dreams May Come? Okay. Robin Williams.
Side story.
Yeah. Robin Williams has a wife and 2 kids. His wife dies in a car accident. And then both his kids die. And then his dog dies. And when his dog dies is when half the theater walked out. They were like, too much.
I get it.
But then, the kids die in a car accident. The wife kills herself. Then the dog dies. And, they're Catholic. So she killed herself. So she doesn't get to go to heaven.
Right.
So Robin Williams dies in this movie and goes to heaven, and then spends the rest of the movie rescuing his wife from purgatory.
Wow. Holy crap.
And the gist of the movie is heaven is big enough where we all get our own.
Right.
And I used to, when I was a kid, I used to talk about how I think heaven is like that. And basically, my heaven would be, I get a Winnebago and I get to travel to everybody else's heaven and get to see all the people. And this movie was kind of like, that's it.
Yep.
That's it.
And I love stuff like that. Because I never, but and we do deal with a lot of that in Reborn. Like, it is a lot of that, and what they control, and even I guess the interesting thing is, and Tommy mentioned this early, but even if you believe wholeheartedly there's a heaven and how it is, what does it do to you if it's not exactly like you thought it was going to be? Just because you were a good person in this timeline or timeline, in this plane, when you go to the next plane, what does it do to you if it's not 100% what you spent your whole life thinking it would be? And Reborn touches on that, right? And once again, in that instance, it's hope, right? Because just because you made a horrible choice doesn't mean that you can't come back from it.
Right.
Right. Like, sometimes you can't, but it's thought provoking in that way. So we'll go here next then.
I figured we'd do that one last.
Okay.
Because I feel like you have a lot to say.
Fine.
Let's see if that'll show up on the camera.
All right. Yeah, this may not, and I really brought this. It's our one manga that we're going to talk about, and it will be brief. But people always write this off as a silly little manga or a silly little anime, and it's like, we don't understand why people like this, or why adult men wasn't always an adult man, but like this. And it's Sailor Moon, and it is very shiny, so it looks like it may show up.
It looks like it looks pretty good.
So at the end of the day, though, Sailor Moon is 100% about hope and the universe and how you should treat people. And don't have preconceived notions about what other people tell you about people. That is really what this whole series is about, and why she is the centerpiece, because everyone else by themselves would not have gotten along. The other Sailor Scouts just would not have ever been friends, but she doesn't look at people that way. Like
Yeah.
she looks at people of what they can bring and who they are. And if somebody told her that, well, those people came, she came from another school and beat up people and all that, and she was like, really? Yeah, let's find out. and that's really the whole background of Sailor Moon. It's not, is it battling? Is it, transformations and stuff? Sure. Like all your normal anime manga stuff is there. But at the end of the day, it is truly about hope and what this one person brings to that universe, and always believing in her friends and never giving up. And like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because I'm not sure Tommy's ever read.
I have not.
So we're not, but I have read all of these. I've watched all the versions of the movies, the anime, and it's all set up that way. And it's a pretty phenomenal story when you step back and not take it for what a lot of people just look at silliness. Yeah. And you can't see it in my room, but I have like Sailor Moon.
There's a lot of Sailor Moon stuff in here.
There's a lot of Sailor Moon stuff in here.
I'm looking at a lunchbox right now.
Lunchbox, yeah. There's a lot of Sailor Moon stuff in my room, only because I want to believe in hope, and it's another example of hope.
Yeah.
Like for the most part, I can usually find hope in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it stands out in this.
Now we're going to talk about a true story. This comic is a documentary series.
It is. This book is 100% documentary. No one will be able to tell me otherwise.
Yep. This is true story.
Like, you may laugh at me and go, no, it is 100%.
True story.
It is Klaus by Grant Morrison and Dan Moore. I don't know how they interviewed him.
I don't know, but they know Santa Claus.
They know Santa Claus.
They told his true story.
And this book is just, I don't know.
I mean, Santa Claus at its core is just about hope.
Right.
Like, you're a poor kid and you've got nothing, and one day a year this magical guy just brings you stuff.
Right.
Whether it's toys or food or whatever. Yeah. Like, I got a lot of fruit and nuts in my stocking as a kid, and I loved it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I didn't really have a lot of fruit and nuts.
And so this is Grant Morrison's and Dan Moore's Santa Claus, basically. And it's about, I mean, it's even titled How Santa Claus Began. And that's what this is. This is how his story began and became the person that we know and love today.
Yep.
And it is the whole embodiment of hope.
Yeah,
we get everything in this book, right? There's
and this, like at Christmas time, there's some movies that you rewatch. I reread this at Christmas
every year.
Yeah,
like it is. This
it's
is 100%
so good,
worth it.
Yeah,
and like, I don't know. It's really hard. It's really hard not to gush.
Yeah,
for me, it's hard not to gush.
They made it like a cool action adventure story.
Yeah,
with a villain,
Krampus. Like, we get Krampus. Like, why is there a Krampus?
Yeah.
We know why.
Yep.
We know why.
But the heart of it is just like this guy who wants to do good. Yeah. He wants to do good deeds and wants the world to be better.
Right.
And that is...
And we get to see the evil, right? Like, we get to see the evil in the world and where it's headed. And we get to watch one guy fight against that evil, even when it's not really in his best interest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, several times over the course, it's like if he just went home.
Yeah.
He would be fine.
He'd be fine. Right.
He'd be like, I could just take a nap.
Right. Yeah. And I think the other good thing about this story, and it's kind of thrown at you, so you don't really have to sit there and go, did I miss something? It's about the little things that you do in your life from beginning to end that always affect things later on.
Mm-hmm.
And the wolf.
Yeah.
Like, he has a pet wolf. And it's things that happen early on that leads him to have a pet wolf. He made decisions.
Yeah.
He made decisions that was not in the best interest of the people in charge, but the best interest of the world.
Yeah.
Right? And what?
There's a theme here.
Yeah. And so basically that's how he became Santa Claus. Like, at the end of the day, but first he was Klaus.
Yep.
And this led him on that journey to find.
And this book was my introduction to Dan Mora, which has become my favorite artist in comics.
If Dan Moore could actually draw every book I read,
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'd be great. Like, if I know he has a contract with DC right now, but if Marvel could throw enough money at him to just draw Spider-Man for like a 12-issue
Well,
miniseries.
I will say I am very excited because he's going to be drawing Superman for a little while.
Actually,
And,
I may actually pick up a Superman book.
Yeah, I've since Dawn of DC started, I've been reading Superman in action.
Right. The Super Family stuff's been pretty good.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed both those books. And I'm usually not big on Superman, but it's one of those things where, like, it's not just about Superman. The supporting cast is just as important as he is. And that makes the book infinitely better.
But at the end of the day, if you just go find your local comic shop and pick up Klaus, I promise you this will be your definitive Santa Claus story.
Yeah.
And everyone that you talk about Santa Claus, you will never talk about reindeer again.
It's all
Ever.
wolves.
It's all wolves. His sleigh is pulled by wolves.
And then I don't remember if it was the second volume or third volume, but there's an evil snowman. Is that the third one?
Might be the third.
I think it's the third one.
Yeah. Because the third one was a bunch of short stories.
Yeah.
So I think it was
Yeah.
Because he wasn't really, once again, he wasn't really evil, but things happened.
Yeah. But it's just funny watching a Santa Claus fight a big evil snowman.
And I think it might be the second one. The second volume is where you start to understand how Santa Claus is dealing with all the children every Christmas.
Yeah.
So we start getting into that in the second one a little bit, which is, you kind of get an idea in here, but once again, there's a big difference between when he was created versus the year of
I think there's 3 volumes.
Yeah,
of Klaus,
there's 3 volumes. Yeah, and actually the third volume just came out in trade.
Yeah,
finally, or hardcover. It was out in trade. It was weird because it was a bunch of short stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The book that really set this whole thing off
is Midnight Nation by Straczynski and Gary Frank. If anyone has ever talked to me, this is my favorite book of all time.
I was gonna say if you know Phillip, you've talked about this book. I guarantee it.
It is literally, honestly, of everything I've ever read, this is my favorite book. Straczynski told a story that was important to him, right? Like, he even talks in here. He talks about this story came while he was walking around San Diego, like late one night after Comic-Con, and seeing the world at night and how it was. And that's when this story basically came to him. It is a complete collection. It was 12 issues, and I think it was a Wizard 1/2.
Yeah.
At the time too. But I love this book. Like, to me, there's nothing better in what I feel or how I look at hope than this book. And the whole crux of this story is there's a cop who was doing his job, and he got attacked, and he kind of fell through the cracks of the world, and it kind of got put in a coma, but his essence fell through the cracks of people who are just forgotten, like homeless people or just whatever. And then it's the journey about him having to cross the country to retrieve his soul. And what will one person do to get his soul back? And what will he give up, or who will he give up to get his soul back? Like, how important is it for you to get the one thing that you need, that you're told to live?
Yeah.
And
along the way, he meets a bunch of people and learns their stories of how they slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
And the story resonates in a way because you see all these people and they have all these different stories, and if you're like me and you've known a lot
of this page here. It's this page here where they're telling all the stories.
You I know these people.
Yeah.
You know, like, these are some of the people I grew up with.
Right. And it's all different stories, from like teachers to like dock workers. I mean, to everything across the gambit. And it's also about the people who have fallen through the cracks and have given up hope.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do? And it's interesting in the sense of, if they've fallen through the cracks, and they may have had hope at first, but now they've given up, And I'm not going to say mockery, but it's the, hey, buddy, like, I've been here for a while. There's no need for you to have hope.
Yeah.
You might as well just go ahead and give up now and just join the rest of us. And it's how do you handle that, right? How do you handle when you're told that you should no longer fight for what you believe is right? Do you go on?
And then having all the odds stacked against you.
Yes.
Like, it seems like, you know what? They've got a point.
They do.
Like, I'm probably not going to win this.
Right.
Why in the world would I keep fighting?
Yeah.
Which, honestly, the spinoff from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel.
Yeah.
The series finale was titled "Why We Fight."
Yep.
I think, or that might have been one of the other. Anyway, the show ends with them about to get into yet another giant fight, and there's a quote from Angel from I don't remember if it was season 2 or season 3, where he has this epiphany, and he's like, the bad guy, the evil in the world is too big. Like, we can't beat it. We'll never be able to defeat it. So if nothing we do matters, all that matters is what we do.
Yeah. So I have that exact quote. It's been at my work since that episode, because that was the episode where he was talking to his son after he pulled his son out of the water and his son was chained up. There's a scene where he has his son chained, and he's basically sitting there going, we don't fight to change the world. We fight to show the world what it can be.
There's
that
Angel is another one of those shows that has its moments where hope shines through.
Yeah.
And I love that idea that, like, even knowing 100% that there's always going to be terrible things that exist, I won't let those terrible things beat me. I will continue to fight against them until I can't fight anymore. And hopefully I have inspired the next person to keep fighting that fight.
But I highly suggest everyone read Midnight Nation. I have not had anyone tell me yet that they did not like it.
Yeah.
And I have given many of these away over the years. I have sold many of these over the years. And I have yet to have anyone come back to me and sit there and go, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Has everyone probably told me? Absolutely not. But I think from the core of what hope is, Midnight Nation is it for me.
Yeah.
And I do read Midnight Nation. Midnight Nation and Klaus, I read every year. Reborn, I pretty much read every year. There may be sometimes I don't read it as much, but Midnight Nation and Klaus I have read every year since they've come out. And Midnight Nation came out in, oh my God, what year did this come out in? Let's see, 2004.
I thought it was early 2000s.
I think it may have been earlier than that, because this is actually a second printing.
Oh, okay.
And it says 2004.
I was thinking like 2001 or 2002 for that book, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, well, both things are saying 2004, so it may have been second printing in 2000. I have first printings also. This is just one that I grabbed off the rack. I have many different versions of this. First printing of the trade came out in 2003.
Okay.
Which means that it probably came out in 2001.
Yep.
So there we go. So it was like 2001 is probably when the series started.
The copy I have is from 2021 as the fourth printing.
Yeah, I have this in every printing size. I used to buy them and just give them out to people. But I love Midnight Nation. Go pick it up at your local shop. You will not regret it.
It's very, very good.
So, and there's lots more books that we're not talking about. This was just wanted to talk about.
Yeah, we could have found about 150,000 more and kept this going indefinitely, but eventually we need to eat lunch.
Right. And so this is like, if you want to feel hopeful in what you read, all the books that we talked about or characters that we talked about is actually a good way to jump into it. You won't be missing anything else. But if you kind of want to see the adversity and then at the end want to feel that like things can get better, these are all good examples of where it's at.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all I have.
I think that's it for us this time.
This time.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll come up with more stuff later.
I'm sure.
All right. everyone, appreciate it. Thanks a lot for joining us again, and we will see you next time. So
like and subscribe. We got to do that
Down
YouTube
below.
thing. Yeah, down. There's a thing in the button and a boop it.
Share with all your friends.
Yes,
Tell everyone.
please. Tell everyone.
All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. Bye. And this